Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. If you do not know me, my name is Kat and I am an electrical engineer working in the space industry. If you want to follow me on Instagram, feel free. I post a lot of good content on there. I also have 2 TikTok accounts, one in English and one in Spanish, so feel free to follow there as well. Okay, so let's get right into it. I asked you guys what questions you had about internships because I know that especially if it's your first one, you have so many questions. There's just such a dump of information, you don't really know where to start. If you're still looking for one, I know it can be a terrifying experience, so let's get right into it. Okay, here's the first question. I have an internship coming up in 2 weeks. How do I make sure I do my best there? So here's my number 1 tip. Write everything down. When you start, it's going to be such a dump of information that you're going to be experiencing, and it's normal, natural, perfectly okay for you to not remember everything, for you to not know everything. That's fine. But if you're able to help future you, why not do that? So if you're in a meeting and they're discussing things that you're gonna have to do in the future, that's gonna be your task, it's gonna be your responsibilities, even if you don't really know what they're saying, just make sure you write that all down because it'll make sense eventually and you'll be really grateful that you wrote all of these things down for future you, who is a little wiser at this point. So things that I used to write down were, other than absolutely everything, for example, I would write down websites. If somebody asked me to request something or do something and I didn't know how, I would ask how to do that. And then I would write it down, write down the website, write down the steps. That way next time it was either asked of me or I needed to do it, I didn't have to ask again. I could just go and do that. And so I remember for one of my internships, they were telling me like, wow, you're such a fast learner. I'll just tell you something once and then by the next time you just get it done. But it's not me being a fast learner, it's me just writing everything down. So that's one way to get noticed as well, is to just really be on top of your note-taking for your own future. Other things that I wrote down were, for example, when I was studying for my project, if there were things that I needed to brush up on or completely new topics that I needed to learn, then I would write it all out in my notebook, kind of like notes for school. Or when you're studying for a test, I would write that all down. And that way when the time came for me to present my project or do any sort of meetings, maybe run a meeting, I had all that information down there. And not only did I have problems that I encountered, but the solutions and the evidence to back it up from theory. So all of that was in my notebook already. If somebody asked me a question, all I needed to do was look for it and then say, it's here, I did that because of this, and this is why that was the right thing to do. So, I mean, that's also something that helps me out a lot. I definitely recommend it. Another thing that I recommend is that you are not scared to talk to others, that you're not scared to approach other people who maybe are not in your group or who are not your mentor at your internship. People are really nice. We love interns. I love when an intern comes and asks me a question or asks me anything about my job, what I'm doing, when they're genuinely interested in my work. I love that. We all love that. So if you have any questions about something somebody is doing, be sure to reach out to them. I promise you, they are not as scary as they seem. They're also going to remember you. And if you're able to maybe voice what you want, maybe next time something comes up, they're going to remember you. That's something that also happened to me. I would tell engineers that I came across that I was really interested in the type of work that they were doing, so that if the opportunity arose, to please let me know, and that I would love to work on a project with them. And it sometimes did arise, and they did reach out to me, and I worked on the projects with them. So don't be afraid to also voice what you want. Okay, next question. How to find them? That is a very good question, and there are many different ways and they're all kind of stressful. So let's get into that. How do you find an internship? From my own experience and what I've seen, the easiest way to actually get an internship is to get face-to-face with somebody. Whether that be at a conference or a career fair or an event that maybe your school is putting on or that the company is putting on at your school. These are the best ways to actually get an internship, because you already have this person in front of you looking at your resume. Sometimes the hardest part is to just get your resume seen to begin with, because so many people are applying for the exact same positions, and it can be really easy for some sort of software to filter yours out for whatever reason, even if you're totally qualified and capable, and then your resume doesn't even get seen at all, and you don't even know that, or you don't even know why. So the easiest way is to get face-to-face with somebody, get their contact information if you're able to. A lot of them are recruiters, and when the recruiter believes in you, they'll also fight for you, and they'll look for other opportunities for you. This has happened to me several times. It happened to me with the company Raytheon. It happened to me with the company Lockheed Martin, where the recruiter themselves was very interested in me as a person and as an applicant based on my resume, and so they would look for opportunities for me. And when I told them, you know, I don't really want to relocate there, they would look for other ones, and I would say, you know, this position really just isn't what I'm interested in for my career, and then they would get me another interview at another department. So they can really be your biggest advocate. Make sure that you also take down their information when you meet them. Sometimes they get invited to different club events, or sometimes you might meet them at career fairs. Now remember, if you're applying to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of places and not a single person has called you back, then it very well might be your resume. So don't get too attached to that resume. It's going to change a lot. Remember that you have to adapt your resume to the position. I've seen so many applications where, you know, it's like they're applying for an engineering position, but then their experience is all over about chemistry labs, but this is like a hands-on technical electronics position, and I'm just like, okay. Like, how does this help us, you know? So you need to find where those ties are with what your skills are, what your experience is, and what the position you're applying for needs and wants from you. You have to do that for every position you apply for. It's extremely important. Don't forget about that. Okay, next question. What were you expected to know as an intern? I'm guessing this is asking me personally. So my mentor was really awesome, and he really wanted a intern. So that was really cool for me, because that meant that he really wanted to spend that time teaching me and helping me develop professionally. So it was really, really cool. I was not expected to know more than what somebody would know from school. So that meant, you know, as an electrical engineer, I needed to know circuit theory, the physics behind the different electronic components, and some actual circuit and PCB design knowledge was necessary for the position when I started, and I did have that. Same thing with my intern, right? So when I hired an intern, I wasn't expecting him to know how to design a spacecraft, a computer. I just expected him to know what I knew when I came in, which was that basic knowledge from courses. So remember that, and remember that that foundation is what you will now use in order to build on in the workplace and to learn about all these different cool things that you're going to be doing. But you're not going to be coming in and automatically be expected to know how to do the job you were hired for, because there's going to be a lot of things that you are not going to know naturally, just because industry works very differently than academia does. So remember that you don't need to know everything. You just need to know that you're gonna have to learn, and that's the important part. Oh, I love this question. How do you overcome the fear of doing something wrong on a project and disappointing senior engineers? Ooh, I've gone through that, and it feels horrible when you're new. Mistakes are normal and they're natural, and I promise you those senior engineers make many mistakes. And I don't mean that as like, oh, they're bad engineers. They're human, they're people, they make mistakes. And it's normal, natural. Sometimes we don't bring our best selves to work. Sometimes we have stuff going on at home, or in the workplace that is affecting our performance. It's normal, it happens. we're not robots, and so mistakes are inevitable, unfortunately. You can be really careful and you can have all sorts of different things that you do to check. I've had projects where I have checked every single thing front and back 3 to 5 times, and yet there was still somehow a mistake at the end of the day. I've had to learn how to deal with mistakes. I did make a pretty big mistake while I was an intern. Thankfully, it was not too hard to fix, but it still felt pretty horrible. It was really helpful for me to have my mentor pretty much guide me through it. You know, he made sure that I felt comfortable. He made sure that I felt okay, that I didn't feel too horrible. He was trying to really essentially comfort and reassure me. And then he started telling me about times when he has made even bigger mistakes. So that was also pretty comforting. But yeah, when you make that first mistake at work, it's really hard. But remember, everyone makes them. And the sooner that you try to find how to fix it, and the less time you spend on trying to make excuses and trying to find somebody to blame and trying to deflect and getting defensive, all that time saved on not doing that is time that you can now dedicate to fixing the problem, because it needs to be fixed. You need to be the one to do it. So that's what's important. What I do is, if somebody tells me I made a mistake, if I catch a mistake, it doesn't matter, you know? It doesn't matter how or what happened. It just, what matters is there's something wrong and I am not going to fix it. So I take a look at the problem, figure out what the best way to fix that is, propose solutions, and take a look at what that mistake is, right? And try to think back, not in a defensive way or like a way of trying to defend myself, more so of how did that happen? What was going on? Did I try to work when I was tired? Did I try to work while I was upset about something? Did I not check that? Was that something that I usually don't check and maybe you should now add and incorporate into my check plan? So mistakes can teach you so much. Remember that it's okay, and come prepared with your action plan. Next question: how to communicate effectively with your mentor? That is a really amazing question, because yes, there are ways that you can communicate effectively with your mentor, especially when you need to ask a question. I've talked about this before on my social media account, where it's really important for you when you approach your mentor with something to know what it is that you are expecting from them. What is it that you're actually asking of them? Remember, when you're an intern and a mentor took you on, it is very likely that, you know, they still have their full-time job, they still have their full-time activities that they're doing, working towards, and they're helping you on the side. That's something that happens very often. So that means that they're very busy and they don't really have all day to teach you everything as much as we would love to. So coming to your mentor in an effective way is very important. Number one, recognize what it is that you need. What are you asking for? Is it that you don't actually understand what you're supposed to do? Do you need clarification on your tasks? Is it that you don't even know where to start? You know that there's something you don't know, but you really don't know where to start. So are you asking for background knowledge and guidance on where to get that? Maybe some articles or maybe a book. Is that what you're asking for? Or are you asking for whether you're going on the right path? Right? Maybe you've already done some work and you want to know, is this actually the right direction? Am I so far doing it right? So it's important for you to recognize, outline, what am I actually asking? And that'll make it so much easier for your mentor to recognize and respond. So before you ask that question, try to characterize and catalog what is it that I need from them. And make sure that you come to them with what you've already tried and what you've already done, because it'll also save you both a lot of time. If you're saying, I'm having a hard time with this, could you point me to something that might help me? But maybe they point you to something that you've already read and it didn't really work out. So make sure you tell them when you ask them. You can say, I've already tried looking at this and this, but it's still not particularly clear. Maybe include a quote that confused you, like this line. I really don't understand what they're trying to say. Could you guide me in the right direction, or could you put me to something else that might be more clear than this? It'll save you both time. It's happened to me so many times that I ask somebody for something and then they just send me stuff that I've already looked at and didn't help. So then I have to reply and be like, yeah, sorry, I already kind of looked at that. That's not what I'm looking for. Maybe something more like this and this. And yeah, saving time for both you and your mentor is incredibly important. And it's also really important for you to get the information you're actually looking for. Okay, next question. How to deal with feeling like your problem is too stupid or small to ask for help? Yeah, I've definitely felt that, and that's something that a lot of us go through when we're interns. I definitely remember that experience back in my internship days, feeling like, you know, your problem is just so dumb and so little, and like they're gonna think you're stupid. And then I remember I had one where I asked my mentor for a question and I had texted it to him. He was out that day, but he told me I could text him if I needed anything. He didn't respond. And then the next day he came up to me and he said, oh, did you want to talk about your question, or did you already figure it out? And to me it was like he was saying like, oh, it was so easy that you should have figured it out by now. And so I kind of was just like, oh no, yeah, it's fine, I figured it out. He said okay. And I hadn't, and I worked on it for like the next day. And then finally I went back and I said, hey, you know, I thought I had it, but I really don't. Can we talk about this? Can we go through this question that I have? And that's when he started telling me about all of the trouble that he's had with this, how it was a little bit hard for him to understand that at first. So I had kind of put words in his mouth, you know. He had said that and I interpreted it in the wrong way. To me, it was, he was asking, oh, did you figure it out? Because by now you should have, it was so easy. But that's not what he was asking. He was generally asking, did you figure it out or not? Because I'm here to help. So it's really hard to try to separate the emotions from this, especially when we're starting. And oh gosh, it's just, I know how you feel. We just, during those times, we feel so small. We feel like we don't know anything. But I promise, just ask. Just ask. Learn how to ask things in the right way so that you'll get what you want. It's also important to learn the type of person that they are. How do they want to be asked? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer for you to call? Do they prefer a video call? What's the best way for them? Because we all have our own patterns of learning, right? And so I think it also applies to explaining. Everyone explains things differently. So how can you make sure that you're both in sync with what they're explaining and your learning style? That's important to recognize and try to work through as well. But just ask. I promise, just ask. Just ask. If you're able to get your project done sooner because of this question that you're asking, that you might feel like it's just so small and you shouldn't even be doing that, you should already know, it's not gonna matter once you get your project done. Just ask. Okay, next question. Tips for getting a full-time job offer from your internship. Okay, yes, I was able to do that. So I do have some tips. I've already mentioned some, like for example, speaking to the other people in the team, speaking to other engineers, maybe in other groups, telling them that you're completely open to any new projects that they might have. And so those are all really great. Those are all, I think that it wasn't just one thing for me, it was the combination of all of those things. So when I worked with those other engineers on projects that they had, they also were able to give my mentor and boss feedback about me. And when that feedback was good, because I did a great job, then now my boss knows, okay, she is young, she's new, but she is working hard and she's already doing the job as an intern of an engineer. So that helped me a lot, and it helped me become pretty much a member of the team on an engineering level much quicker. Another thing is having that conversation with your mentor and whoever your boss is, telling them that this is where you want to be, asking them whether there's going to be any openings in the future, and if they could please let you know when there's an opening, that way you can apply. So sometimes what will happen is if they are looking to hire somebody, and if they are looking for people, then they might just come to you first and say, do you want to interview for this position before I put it out into the world? So by you letting them know that you're interested, that when a position opens up, you want to apply, it's very possible that when a position does open up, they're going to come to you instead of putting it out into the open. And you can get an offer that way. That's pretty much what happened to me. I voiced my interest in the group from pretty early on to my mentor and to my boss. So they were aware. I received a job offer about, can't remember if it was 6 months. I think it was a little more than 6 months before my college graduation. So I already had a job offer pretty early on. I didn't have to interview. They already knew me. They already knew my work. I was already working with them. Had been for the past, year. So that was also another really cool thing. And that came from my own initiative and my own drive and my own willingness to say what I wanted. Now, this is also something that I saw. There were some people in our group who were majored in something else. They were doing an internship for us, but they didn't necessarily want to stay. So another thing that you can do is also make sure that you make your voice heard on that. So I know a couple people who went to our boss and told him, do you know of anybody who is hiring perhaps in this group or in this group who would be interested in taking a look at my resume? Now, this person who you worked under knows you, knows your work. They are able to provide a recommendation and referral if they feel comfortable with that. And if they do, then they'll do it. So I know a couple people who got hired in that way as well, even though they didn't actually intern in the same group. So remember, it kind of comes down to not just doing a really good job, making sure that you're out there doing the work, talking to people, networking, but also making sure that people know what you want. All right, I think that video is already pretty long by now, so I'm gonna stop there. But if you have any other questions, I could always do a part 2. Let me know, put that down in the comments. And I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you have a beautiful internship. Let's get this done. Bye, everyone.